Okay, hi everybody. I'm going to get started because I think we're supposed to start at 3:45. So, hi, welcome. Thanks for coming to my session about the Programmer's Notebook. I was kind of hoping this would be like sort of interactive. If anybody has questions or want to talk about how you take notes for your development work, please just shout it out. Since I'm mic'd, I'll repeat the question. But I know that being in the theater makes that a little challenging. Anyway, my name is Luke. I currently work at GitHub, which I hope you've all heard of and maybe even use. You can find me at Look on GitHub or at Elof on Twitter. And I'm going to be talking today about the Programmer's Notebook. And so maybe you're not supposed to give away your talk right at the beginning, but this is the TLDR of what I'm going to talk about today. Write things down in a searchable format. If you're already doing that and you're like, all right, I'm good, like, I won't be mad. So just to give some context about where I'm coming from in my my note-taking journey, as it were, I want to give some background about me. So first of all, I'm a huge procrastinator. If there was like an award for procrastination, I would probably win it. This is basically me. I have a to-do list that I write down things on and then don't do. The thing about procrastination and to-do lists is I think they go really good together, because one of the best ways to procrastinate is to write something down, because then you can pretend like you're, making progress without actually doing any work. And so this is kind of how I manage my to-do lists. This is a real to-do list that I took a picture of. What I do is I have a piece of paper and I write down what I want to do, and then I cross off the things I do. And once I fill up that whole sheet of paper, and you can see like this is written on the back too, I get a new sheet of paper and I copy all the things that I didn't do onto the new to-do list. And so like some of these things, like I really should make a will. I have kids now, so that's kind of important. Watching the sharpening video, the first item, I have a bunch of knives that are really dull, and I have this video about how to sharpen them. And watching this video about how to sharpening them has been on this list for about 2 years. I did recently check something off that has probably been on there for the longest, which is I bought a pair of pants that were too long, and I had written "Get Pants Tailored," and that stayed on there for, I think, 3 years. But I finally did get the pants tailored, and they're awesome. I wore them yesterday, so that's great. Anyway, I really like to write things down. I've been keeping a notebook. It's not calling it a diary is not really is giving it too much credit. It's just a notebook where I write things down. I've been doing that for about almost 20 years. And so this is a box. I have definitely not Marie Kondo'd my box of old journals. I probably should, because there's some embarrassing stuff in there. But anyway, this is my box of journals. And so I kind of the way I approach things is I have a list of things I'm trying to do. I keep a notebook with me to write down random things. And so I kind of have like this complicated system. So I've got paper to-do lists. I was using Evernote. I'll talk more about that later, but Evernote's really slow, so I had this thing called Fast Ever to make it faster. I also keep track of what I accomplished during the day, and I used to use a tool called I Done This, which is actually really interesting, and I'll talk about that towards the end of the talk, about like why you might want to do that and what benefits you can get from it. But this is all like combined, and I was like, how can I make this easier? And so my answer to that is that I'm going to replace it all with Emacs. And if you don't know what Emacs is, it's like an ancient text editor that some people like me still use.
Do you take questions during the talk?
Yeah, sure. Shoot it out.
I was just wondering, where does this idea with the notebook come from initially? I worked for a company a few years ago where suddenly I was confronted with this notebook. Like they gave me a notebook. They said, put your stuff down here.
Yeah.
What is this? I'm completely unfamiliar with this.
So the question is like, where does this idea of the notebook come from? And I don't know the answer, but that's not going to stop me from giving my opinion. Which I believe that it goes back to the old, slide rule and pencil engineers. Like you would always have paper at your desk to write down, parts of the process that you're doing. And that's kind of how I use my notebook. I have a notebook that I use for work too, where it's like just things related to work. Yeah, you have a question?
I can probably tell you why the notebook was bound, and I'm going to guess, because the company's lawyers said, have your people write down the bound notebook with ink so they could prove when stuff happened, and it can't have been shown to be edited later, because there used to be some patent cases.
Okay.
To invent.
So this gentleman is saying the reason that the notebooks are bound, like you can't tear them out because for evidence in patent trials and stuff like that. So that's cool. So anyway, this is what I've been talking about so far is a lot about to-do lists and keeping track of what you've done and writing things down in paper. But what do I mean by like a programmer's notebook? Like what is special about that? And to me, like there's basically four things that I would need, and your needs might be different. Like what you need to make you an effective programmer might be different. But for me, it's got to be fast to add entries. Like I want like a minimal context switch to be able to like if I'm working on a problem and I need to jump in or I discover some like side area that I'm going to forget about. Like I want to capture that really quickly. If I find out how to do some Kubernetes thing, like I want to have a place to put that. So it's got to be fast to add entries. It's got to be searchable. It needs to be available on multiple platforms. So for me, I have a personal laptop, I have a work laptop, I have an iPhone, I have the web. Like I want to be able to see my notes across all of that, and ideally edit them as well. And then another thing is I want it to be a portable data format because I don't want to have to do this. I don't want to lose my work, Putting all your stuff in Evernote or whatever is, I was using it, so I understand the appeal of having an easy-to-use piece of software. But like for me, that's just kind of a deal breaker now. And so my journey as like a programmer using a notebook really changed in a previous job that I had a few years back. You saw my stack of boxes and whatever, but like it was just this simple idea. I was working with my coworker, and he had a Scratch file, and every time he found out how to run some GNU parallel command, and if you've ever used GNU parallel, like the man page is like impenetrable. He would stick it in the Scratch file, and then like 2 weeks later, we'd be like trying to grep the logs on 8 servers, and he'd be like, "Oh yeah," and it was right there. And so I've been doing a lot of stuff, writing things down. I was using Evernote. I was tracking things, but I didn't have that simple like right there in my text editor experience of just having a place to dump stuff. And so that's not like a huge innovation or anything. Like, in fact, kind of embarrassingly simple. But it was 15 years into my career before I encountered anyone doing that, and it kind of changed like how I work. So I'm going to talk more about like my setup, but first I'm going to talk about like kind of a broad survey of different note-taking tools, because I know like my tastes are not for everyone. So first of all, there's kind of like the biggest one is probably Evernote. A lot of people have, who's used Evernote? Yeah, like almost everyone in this room. And I still have an Evernote account, but like, I feel like Evernote is a company that's potential has gotten away from it. No offense to anyone who works there or anything, but like they were like one of the pioneers of the freemium model, and they made their free product maybe a little too good because you could just use it essentially forever and never pay them. And so a few years back, they ratcheted down on that, and they made it so like you could only log into Evernote from one device unless you paid them. And so I used to use Evernote on my phone, Evernote on my laptop, my work laptop, my personal laptop, everywhere. And then it was like, okay, well, you can use the web app if you need to access it. And I was like, this is lame. And so that's kind of what started me on my journey of finding something better. Evernote has a proprietary data format, so it does not meet that criteria. Fortunately, there are exporters. Like if there's notes that you have in Evernote that you really need to get out, there are export data. Another oldie but goodie is notational velocity and its forks. This one's cool because like I think what you can see from the screenshot, it's really pioneering this idea of like search is the primary user interface, and the files are just text files. And so there's a file, and you search it. And that's all you do with this program, and that's pretty cool. Another one that's similar to that is SimpleNote. This is now today owned by Automatic, the company that makes WordPress, and it's open source and it's very cross-platform. I actually didn't find this when I was like looking at Evernote alternatives, but I think if I did today, like I would have considered it more strongly because it is available on Mac, Windows, Linux, iPhone, Android, the web. Like, I mean, it's extremely cross-platform and an open data format, and a very nice looking program. Another one is Quiver, and Quiver, like their tagline is literally the programmer's notebook, and I've recommended people use this, and they have adopted it, and they really like it. I personally haven't, but I think it, like, as far as like my platonic idea of what a programmer's notebook should be, I think this is right up there. And the cool thing about Quiver is that the text that you can type in here is Markdown, but you can have different blocks of different kinds of content. So you can have like a block with an image, or a block, as you can see in this screenshot, with Objective-C code. And it knows that that's Objective-C code. And so it can syntax highlight it correctly. Very cool. And so that makes it really useful for capturing snippets, which is something that a lot of people do for programming work. So I really like Quiver. It is not a free program. It's only available on the Mac and iOS ecosystem, so that could be a deal breaker for some people. It does have an open data format that's based on JSON, so you can back it up with source control. You can grep it, but it's not, you're not going to be able to like quickly import it to another format. You'd have to write an exporter. Another one that people really like, and I think in terms of like just pure aesthetics, is probably the best, is Bear. A lot of my coworkers really like this program for keeping track of things. As you can see from the screenshot, it just looks very nice, very solid. But I hate myself, so I use org mode. And you're like, what is org mode? Who knows what org mode is? Okay, we've got like 5 people maybe. So who knows what Emacs is? Okay, cool. So Emacs is a text editor or an operating system or something. And Emacs is complicated, and I've gone away from Emacs in the past, and I keep coming back to it because I think Kieran Healy expressed it the best. Kieran Healy's not actually a programmer. He's a sociologist, but he does all his writing in Emacs. And he says he does that because like you could switch to another program, but like that program's always going to go out of date. But Emacs is going to be there when the ice caps melt and the city's drowned, humanity destroys itself, and roaches achieve sentience. And then at that point, like, not only will Emacs's key combos seem satisfyingly ergonomic for the typical arthropod, but actually direct evidence for the universe's intelligent gut designed by some 6-legged, multi-jointed god. That's like an Emacs joke, because like when you're using Emacs, there's a lot of this. There are workarounds, but because there's workarounds for everything in Emacs. And that's because Emacs learning curve is kind of like a spiral. You've probably seen this joke. I didn't make this up. It really is like that. And I have to be the first to confess that I am actually a terrible Emacs user. Like most Emacs users are very good at customizing their environment. I keep mine pretty vanilla. I don't do a lot of customization because like I don't understand it. But when you take this spiral learning curve and then you add org mode, and it's a little more like this. Org mode is a text format. It's a text format like Markdown, but it's also an outliner. Does anybody know what an outliner is? Yeah? Okay. Outliners were really big in the 80s. Like, everybody wanted to have an outliner. And all an outliner is like a hierarchical writing environment. So you can have a headline and then a subheadline, and then each item can be associated with text. And so that's at the core what org mode is. I'll make you stop, allow you to stop looking at this fractal and show you some org mode. So org mode is at its core an outliner. So these stars indicate the headline level, so that everything starts at the top level, and then you can have subheadlines, as many as you want. Actually, I think there is like some limit, like 7 or something. But you can then add any kind of content you want into your headline, or below any item. And so, for example, this line here I have, this says org mode can contain many kinds of content. Like, so you can insert links. Like, it's actually, I think its syntax for links is a little more understandable than Markdown, but it is different. You can also embed files, and so like the files will get rendered right there in your text editor buffer, which is pretty cool. Because Emacs is a text editor, but it's also an operating system, so of course it has like a PNG viewer like built in. You can also quote source code, and like this example is Ruby. You can quote other kinds of source code. There are extensions to org mode to allow you to like actually do literate programming, so you can like splice your source code together and like actually run it, which is kind of cool. I mean, I don't do any of that, but it's interesting. So it's a little similar to Markdown, except like turned recursive and fractal and upside down, and it also does a lot of other things. For example, every item, every headline can be associated with a tag. Okay, well. So we're going to be associated with tags. So these are tags, and you can filter your entire workspace by those tags and search on them. But you can also mark them with a status. So you can say it's a to-do item or a done item or canceled. And you can make up your own statuses too, of course, because it's Emacs. And so like with all this together, like I can basically do like 90% of what I was doing with Evernote just in one org mode file, and so that's kind of what I'm doing. But it has a lot of other features too, which I'm not going to talk about too much. For example, someone has written, like it has a really nice table mode, and so somebody wrote a spreadsheet for org mode. So yeah, anyway. So this is my setup. What I really wanted to be able to do is have, like I've said a couple times, I have a work computer, I have a home computer, I have a phone, and I want to be able to access my notes and add notes whenever I want. And so I was originally hoping to use GitHub for that because I had started storing my notes in GitHub, and I just wanted to like sync GitHub to my different places. And that actually didn't turn out to work very well because it's hard to do that, especially because it's hard to do that on your phone. I did actually find a Git client at least for the iPad that has a text editor built in, so it is possible, but I ended up going with a different tool. I used Icloud. So Icloud Sync, it's kind of like Dropbox Sync, but it works pretty well. It's very fast, so like I can change a file on one laptop, save it, and then like the change appears in Emacs like basically instant, within a second. And then for the phone, I use an app called Borg, which is a mobile app for iOS that has a org mode parser, and so it's basically like a agenda, like a mobile agenda view for you. Oh, I forgot to talk about agenda items. So this last line here, the dates in the angle brackets there, that puts it on your agenda. And that's how you associate items with time. And so that's really cool because you can like create this view called an agenda where it'll just show you all the things that you're supposed to be looking at that time. All right, so that's my setup. There's other ways to do this. Some people use Dropbox. I use iCloud because it's like built in and free. And then I want to talk about Android for a second. There's also an Android version of an org mode editor called Orgsly that a lot of people like. I think it's actually probably a little better than Bjorg, but it's only for Android, and I don't have an Android phone. And so I want to talk a little bit about keeping track of what you do as opposed to keeping track of what you need to do. And so I would call this concept a done list. And about 8 years ago, I started using this program called I Done This. And this is what it looks like. This is a screenshot from their website. So basically, they send you an email every day, or you can use their web app, and you can just type in what you want to do. This is an example of a goal, which is something that you want to do, but you can also just say, I did this. So I had lunch with a customer. I worked on the bug about the thing. Like, you just record that every day. And the way that I used I Done This is I would associate with a project. So I'd say like GitHub, fixed bug for rendering markdown files or whatever. And you'd hit enter and it just saves it. And the reason why I think that this is a really powerful tool is because like when you go back, like you can go back and look at what you've accomplished. And that's important when you need to like make a case for like, here's the things I did this year. Like you have that written down, and that's really useful. And I think it's really important to do this like in the moment, like either like as you're doing it or that night. I usually do it that night because otherwise, like if I don't do it that night, like I will completely forget. And so imagine trying to remember what you accomplished over the last 12 months when you're writing up your performance review, like, anywhere between, like, so you do one performance review a year, say, like half of that stuff's 6 months old. Like, you're not going to remember anything but the most broadest strokes. And so I think that this is a really powerful tool. So I'll show a little, let's see if I can, I think you do hide. I used to be really good at presentations. Oh yeah, this is going to be fun. I was going to show a demo. Oh, here we go. Okay. Here's my window. Now I need to make it big. Woo! Okay, so this is some real done lists that I ported from my done this to org mode. Just wanted to show you. I kind of sanitized it a little bit, but each one of these items, you hit tab and you can collapse it. You can do that below these too. So this is extra stuff you could add if you wanted to. And then if you hit tab, it goes away. The thing on this edge is a tag for the item, and so I could filter this by all the work I did on MinneStar back in 2012. But I think this is kind of like, I mean, this isn't really mind-blowing or anything, but this is kind of interesting to look at what I was doing back in March 2012. Like, I was working on adding some discussions to an app I was working on, but I was also working on the Sessionizer, where like export all presenter bios to CSV. Like that was for why were we doing that? I don't remember why we do that, but some report we needed to run. General registration. It's just kind of cool to be able to look back on this and be able to tell people about that stuff. So that's what I like about that. So if there's one tip that I can give you from this session, it's simply like write stuff down, make it searchable, whatever format you're doing. You have a question?
Is that timestamp there automatically?
Yes, I can show you how that works actually. So this is a special format. This bracket format means don't add it to my agenda. I use that because I don't really care about the agenda that much. But you just do one of the innumerable Emacs key combos. It's Control X exclamation mark, which you'll totally remember. And then I can put did give talk at MinneBar. And then I can tag it with MinneStar or MinneBar or whatever. That ends, yeah, so that's done automatically. Yeah, so anyway, write stuff down, make it searchable, and make it in an open format so that you can refer back to it later, so you can sync it to source control or other computers very easily. And keeping track of what you've done is actually like a really powerful tool, I think. I get a lot of, like, I guess, satisfaction out of it to be able to go back and look at those things. Yeah.
Okay, so you do use it to look back a lot? You feel like you get that return on the investment of time?
Yeah, I do. I mean, it takes maybe like 3 minutes a day.
Okay.
So, sorry, the question was like, do I actually look back on it? And yeah, I do. Like, I mean, I don't make a habit of like scrolling through my stuff from like a long time ago, but I have it. Like, my whole file, my real file it's from 2012 to now, and it's 500K. Like, it's a small file. And I can grep it if I want to. Usually I don't grep. Usually I just use Emacs built-in search feature. And if I'm looking for a thing on my project.
Is there any compatibility with search history for Chrome or bookmarks?
That's a good question. So he's asking about like search history or bookmarks in like your browser. No, I haven't really integrated that. There is some stuff about web clippings into org mode. So like there's an add-on to like add a URL to your notebook, which is kind of cool. I haven't played with that myself, but I know it exists. I guess another tool I do use is if you've ever heard of Pinboard, it's a bookmarking service. It costs like $12 a year or something like that, but I think it's worth it. It saves a copy of your URLs. So I use that to keep track of links and stuff and look back on those. Cool. Any other questions? Yeah.
So when is that going to be available?
That?
Yeah, it's not.
Oh, did I not make it private? I'll fix that after the talk. I'm sorry. I forgot to make my repo public. Yeah.
So if you're ever at a place where you don't have your laptop with you, or phone, I guess, or iPad, like, do you still have paper?
I pretty much always have my phone. So like Borg, the little Borg icon there down in the corner, that's been kind of a game changer for me, just to be able to add something quickly to my to-do list. And I think what that's getting me to do is move more of the stuff that I would have written on that sheet of paper, like just capture it in org mode. Yeah?
Have you ever gone and tried to mine those notebooks? I've gone through and taken my spiral notebooks, cut them off, run them through a double-sided scanner, and tried to get those over to an iPad or something in PDF format. Have you ever gone through that?
No, that would be cool. So he's asking if I've ever tried to mine the data. I did do like a little project on the text frequencies of the done lists, which is kind of interesting because you can see projects like rising and falling over time and stuff. It's not a ton of data though, so it's not super interesting. I guess that does bring up a point I wanted to make about like note taking. Like for me, the thing that I'm still missing with note taking is like the ability to draw diagrams. I think for me, paper is still the thing for that. I know a lot of people use iPads, but I worry about like the permanence of that. Yes.
I got a Rocketbook for Christmas.
Okay.
And I really like it because I really like to put pen and paper, if you will.
Yeah.
And it has a QR code at the bottom. And so you can scan it with your phone or whatever, and it uploads to whatever cloud you want it to.
Oh, cool.
And you can wipe off the pages, so it's really sustainable.
And that.
The problem that I have with it, and that way you can capture documents, it does have OCR, so it will read your handwriting, and I write in cursive, so it can read my handwriting. But it can also like just take a picture of it.
Okay.
The problem that I have is that it requires specific pens. And I was actually at a client site, and my pen ran out of ink, and so I was like, I
Yeah.
So that's one of the drawbacks, but I think it's really cool.
Yeah, so for the video, that's Rocketbook.
Rocketbook.
Yeah, so it's a note-taking system that is integrated with their software to let you scan diagrams and stuff. Cool. Yeah?
Oh, what are your thoughts about OneNote?
Yeah, the question is, what are my thoughts about OneNote? I almost put OneNote on the slides. It's actually a pretty cool program. I just got access to it because you might have heard Microsoft bought my company. So now I get free Microsoft software. But I haven't used it extensively. But I do know it has the OCR features as well. So like you can scan, like take a picture of a document and like it'll extract text from it, which is very cool.
Yeah, you can also do drawings and
Oh, cool.
calculations and tables.
Oh, nice.
It's a really great tool.
The one caveat with OneNote is if you're going to multiple places that have multiple Microsoft accounts, you don't work well together. Getting to your personal OneNote from your work computer or vice versa.
Does anybody else have any like note-taking apps they like or tips? Yeah.
Started to use Notion.
Notion. Cool. Is that what platforms is that on?
Yeah, it's on the web, and I think they have Android and iOS client as well.
Okay.
Just like to comment that you're really touching the tip of the iceberg in terms of org.
Oh yeah.
Like it's if you are used to these tools where you capture all the information that you're currently working on, org mode will pretty much do that. Like capturing the link that you're working in. You're going to take a note. You're in the middle of source code.
Yeah.
And you have a thought, and it's about what you're currently working on. You can capture the link of the file, the position that you're currently in, and then create a note, and it will link you back into that source code,
Yeah.
the exact line that you were working on.
Yeah. I'm.
Agenda mode that you're talking about, like it's a dynamic calendar. You can sort by priority.
Yeah.
There's just so much to do.
Yeah.
If you're all interested, take a look at it.
He's telling me I'm scratching the surface of org mode, and that is very true. Like I should just bring. Well, I'm probably not on the Wi-Fi, but if you go to the org mode website, you can get kind of a brief tour of like what it can do, and it doesn't even really go too much into the features he's talking about. But yeah, it's very powerful, and like that's kind of why I feel confident in investing in it, because it's like, I mean, yeah, it's esoteric, it's weird, whatever, but like it's gonna be there forever. Like there's gonna be some crotchety old like Emacs user in 2060 who's gonna be like keeping org mode up to date. So like I feel good about that.
It may be you.
Cool. Well, on that note, I would probably call it. Thanks so much for coming. Really enjoyed